says it is now investigating the funding behind the anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles. Some lawmakers are worried that foreign influence and ideological donations are fueling the violence and that protesters are being paid. The protests started organically last week after a massive ICE raid in LA, but they've since taken a turn. National correspondent Jeff Harris has more.
Our researchers found there are two main organizations involved in funding these LA protests: the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights and the Central American Resource Center, both receiving government funding at the federal and also state levels. FBI Director Kash Patel announcing this week the FBI is investigating any and all monetary connections responsible for these riots, following mostly peaceful demonstrations in response to several immigration raids in LA late last week. Anti-ICE protests began escalating. Immigration officers assaulted, vehicles burned, and businesses looted. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons calling it pure chaos.
If you have to watch out for a burnt car, that isn't a peaceful protest.
David Carter, who teaches criminal justice at Michigan State, says funding protests is not uncommon and not all are violent. But the FBI's investigation won't focus on the act of funding, rather the intent behind the money given.
Funding to support illegal activities would be unlawful.
Our researchers found two organizations heavily involved in these protests: the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, who receives nearly $34 million a year in government grants, including private donations from Act Blue, a Democratic fundraising platform. The Central American Resource Center is the second, receiving federal and California state grants along with some private funding. President Trump speaking in Fort Bragg Tuesday, saying some protesters are being compensated.
They're incompetent, and they paid troublemakers.
A history professor at Cedarville University, Stanley Schwartz, compares what's happening in LA to the death of George Floyd in 2020. Organic, peaceful protests turning into organized, professional, and violent ones.
The conflict from the very beginning is citizens against law enforcement. So it becomes very difficult then to tamp down a protest as it's becoming more violent.
Now, Carter says the FBI will likely look at infrastructure first to find where the funding is coming from, since there is usually a core group of protesters receiving resources like training that others don't get. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.